Revolutionary salutations to the people of Zimbabwe. Comradely salutations to the suffering masses of our people. Welcome to yet another episode of the Tête-à-Tête, the People's Show. We are glad to be back and having another episode of the show after a short hiatus. But in the last episode, we focused on a lot of things, and today we'll continue from where we left, and of course, talk about other matters that have arisen in our country and beyond the borders of our country. But before I don't need to introduce Comrade Dos Santos, but before I bring him into the conversation, we have to remind our viewers, those who comment on YouTube, on Facebook, Twitter, and various social media platforms, that we do take seriously your comments. We value your feedback. We read the comments one by one, especially on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. And we do appreciate your consistent viewership and followership. For those of you who have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, Tête-à-Tête, Facebook, Tête-à-Tête, Twitter, or X, we are the Tête-à-Tête there. Please kindly follow the show and follow our social media handles for more and regular updates. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and I want to bring Comrade Dos Santos into the show. Welcome to the show, Comrade Dos Santos. I understand you're in Ghana at the AFCON talking about debt, so we'll talk about debt today, not only in Zimbabwe, but the debt crisis in Africa. If there's a debt crisis in Africa, you tell us. You attended that conference in Accra. We're going to talk about the democratic alternative, where we left in the previous episode. We're going to talk about the state of taxation, new taxes that have been introduced by the Minister of Finance, Professor Mtuli, new presumptive taxes and their effects from a tax justice, social justice point of view and inequality perspective. And if time permits, I think we'll also delve into the politics of the region. The African continent. Ethiopia has launched the biggest hydroelectricity project, the biggest dam on the continent. They're expected to generate around 5,000 megawatts of electricity. So what does that mean? The funding model, the role of the developmental state, the role of citizens, a capable state in mobilizing funds for development. So you might want to greet the people before we get straight into the show.
Thank you very much. Greetings, Comrade Mlambo. Greetings, fellow Zimbabweans.
Yes. So thank you so much, Comrade Dos Santos. So from our last meeting, our last episode of the Tête-à-Tête, which generated a lot of debate, by the way, online, in terms of the content that we were talking about. Some people were actually saying, no, these boys, someone said these boys they're ideologues, they're ideological purists. What they're saying is not practical and stuff like that. So we're also going to try and debunk some of the myths to say what we are saying, the developmental state idea, the role of the state in development, the role of fair, equitable taxation in national development, the role that having a capable state that thwarts corruption plays is not merely rhetorical, theoretical, ideological. I think you mentioned that one of our biggest banes as a people is that we shy away from ideological conversations. So we would want, firstly, for you to address what we say on the Tête-à-Tête. Is it entirely ideological purism, or is something that we are learning lessons from developmental states from the past? So begin from there, then we move to the next level.
No, thank you very much, Brandon. I think that what we are very clear about, our proposition is that Zimbabwe needs a democratic developmental state model in order to rescue this country from the crisis. Because the challenge in the country is that we have got a ruling class without ruling ideas. So we must shy away from this risk of falling into the same track and the same challenge of reproducing the current establishment into the future of our country. What is the current existence? The character of the ruling establishment at the present moment is that it shies away from ideas, from principles, from values, and more importantly, from the importance of an ideological anchor. A nation without a national vision cannot thrive. A nation cannot succeed because a national vision is the country's ideological posture and persuasion. So it drives the nation, it rallies ordinary people, the working class, professionals, the diplomatic community, because it informs the country's direction, even in regional international politics.
So ideology is important.
So it is the starting point.
Maybe possibly, what is ideology? Maybe the word ideology might sound like a curse word to some people. What is ideology?
So ideology is a set of values and beliefs that inform the country's conviction, your institutional value system. Because for China to be where it is today, it started with a clear ideological direction. So the investment by the Chinese Communist Party was on its ideological anchor. What is the character of the Chinese economy that they intended to build? That's why up to date they talk about Mao Zedong.
Socialism, Chinese characteristics.
You get the point.
Yes.
So it was on an ideological anchor. So, and it informs who you want to uplift.
So in essence, it's a guide, it's a compass.
It's like a compass.
It's like you're in a forest and you have a map. You're in or let's say you're in an unknown land. There's no GPS. You have a physical map.
You get the
and
point.
a compass.
So you
use that.
You can't say this a little paper is useless.
It's not useless. I'll get to where I'm going.
You get lost.
No. So that's ideology.
When you are in the road, you give reference to what is it that we agree. What is the Zimbabwe that we want to see in the next 10, 15? But not only that 15 years, but the ideology is not medium term. It's the long-term national vision.
Yes.
Where do you want to go in the next 100 years?
Thank you so much. So I guess this clears the air to some of our viewers who were accusing us of being ideological purists, some were saying what we are saying is impractical, but the examples are numerous.
Precisely.
The developmental states that you're talking about, your Malaysia, your Singapore, Japan, China itself, the strong role of the state in economic planning. So in essence, what you're saying is national planning should inform a national democratic economy. Precisely. So ideologically, that's what we are talking about.
That's where we stand.
That's where we stand. That the state must have the necessary capacity.
Precisely.
So that we don't have a scenario where the state is outsourcing through tenders. What stops the state from having a company that fixes roads, that develops roads, that builds bridges? Public works. What's the use of public works ministry?
Precisely.
So from an ideological point of view, maybe you want to touch on that.
Yes, you see. Our proposition, and this does still to our last conversation, on what should be the character, content, and posture
of the democratic
alternative, given where we are. We believe that the social democratic character of the movement it must be informed by the following things. Number one, that it must associate publicly with the idea that the state must lead development.
Yes.
So that is the starting point.
Not the private sector.
No, we are very clear on our proposition that development must be led by the state.
Possibly why the state?
Because the state will play the role of an arbiter between capital and the ordinary people. Because we've got a history. What is the history of this country? Is that our people, the disadvantaged, the oppressed, the poor, would need the state to ensure that it regulates movement of natural resources from points of extraction to the benefit of the ordinary men and women in our country. So, but what is important for those who are anti the proposition of the state, they must understand that we are not saying the state in its current contract. The state must be a state that is led by stewards. It must be a caring state. It must be a state that shuns corruption. It must be a state that believes in the value of accountability and transparency. It must be a state that builds the capacity of its bureaucrats. What do you see when you are looking for a national ID of a passport? It's not what we're talking about. You want a functional state. The ease of doing business that Ntuli Ncube proposes is not what we're talking about. It must be easy for you to open a bank account in this country. One of the most difficult things in this country is opening a business bank account. So all these bureaucratic red tapes are what the state must be capacitated to do. It must be the state that is a clear ideological posture that informs its policy and its foreign policy thrust and direction. Its re-engagement program must be informed by this value. So that's what we
that's what you mean. So yeah, but we just wanted to set the tone first, answer some questions, make things clear that there is no development that is going to come to any developing country if the state does not play a leading role in planning the economy. The state must plan the economy. If you leave everything entirely in the hands of the private sector's interests are to profiteer, essentially.
Precisely.
That's why people form businesses. But the state is not in the business of making profits.
Precisely.
The state is in the business of making provision for basic services.
Precisely.
But we need to move from the discourse of providing basic services to providing rapid industrialization,
yes,
to providing effectively run state-owned enterprises, SOEs. Yozesa, Zinwa, Ada, all these, they should be capable to an extent that if you are to form your own private company to compete, you would have to think twice.
That is the important point.
Because the state is not chasing profit. So thank you so much, Comrade. So moving on the issue of the democratic alternative. Last time, before we ended the show, you were talking about the character, the content, the shape. We are in the month of September, and we know that the MDC was formed in September. In 1999, but it wasn't just formed in September. There were events that had happened that prior to them meeting at with the Women's Bureau and then Rufaro Stadium and launching the party on the 11th of September. But you can see that it was a concerted effort, the church, the constitutional movement, the student movement, and some sort of organizing around. We don't want the ISAP, structural adjustment. We don't want corruption. We want a new constitution. So in the present epoch that we're in the present context, where we are seeing what we might call a backslide in terms of opposition politics, movement building, grassroots building in this country, can you take us through what you envision, possibly the democratic alternative, especially the importance of having a founding manifesto? Start from there and build from there.
No, thank you very much, Prabhu. That's a very important point, because the democratic movement has suffered assault for the past 26 years. The democratic contingent, as we refer to it in these platforms, has suffered assault. But this is not new for democratic crusaders across the world. So we mourn, we reflect, but we also must forge ahead.
Yeah.
We must not lose hope on the dream that made people to meet on the 11th of September 1999. That dream is a democratic society, a society that works for every Zimbabwean.
That was the ideology.
That was the galvanizing force, what we call the conscience of the moment.
Conscience of the moment.
The conscience of the moment that led workers, students, the church,
peasants,
ordinary people,
the women's movement.
The fact that Zimbabweans said we want a pro-poor, labor-backed organization.
So ideologically, they were pro-poor.
They were very clear.
Formed by workers.
It was formed by the working people. The working
Possibly
people,
they should have been called the Labour Party.
Precisely.
Yes.
The working people were representative of the poor. Because the workers are the poor.
Yes.
They are the oppressed of the world.
Yeah.
So we formed the democratic movement so that these poor people can find fully political expression in the vehicle of the movement for democratic change. That's why its key values were justice, freedom, and solidarity. To reflect
ideologically that they are social democrats.
So we are at a crossroads as a nation. The democratic movement has suffered assault. What must inform the next political conversation in our country is to say now the constitution is under threat. There is a deliberate attempt to undermine 26 years of the fight for a people-centered and people-driven constitution that reflects the aspirations of the people. Because the reason why the constitution is the most sacrosanct document, because it protects everyone. It protects ordinary people, protects professionals, business,
even regulates power.
It regulates excess power. That's why it is a clear principle of separation of powers between the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive. So the first point of entry at the present moment is that Zimbabweans, all of them must speak against the amputation of the constitution.
Regardless of your political views.
Secondly, because it protects even those that are within the state at the present moment. It is the constitution that we need now to protect Walter Mzembe.
That's true. The right to bail. The right to bail, fair trial.
It is the same constitution that must protect Jonathan Moy's freedom of movement from Kenya to Zimbabwe.
Actually, the constitution actually says every person has a right to live and to come back to Zimbabwe.
So Jonathan Moy does not need essays on Twitter.
He just
Jonathan Moy needs the constitution
to protect him.
to bring him back to this country. Because the freedom of movement is protected for and codified by the constitution of our country.
Wow.
But when you are still in the helm of power, you would think that the constitution does not matter.
Yeah.
So it is also a reminder
to those in power,
to the 2030 putschists, because it's basically a push against the constitution.
It's treasonous, actually.
If you are pursuing a provision that needs a referendum to be amended, if you want to do it without that particular process. So it must be remembered for those that yield the power. When we were student leaders and met with Chivhayo from Zimbabwe,
yes,
you would think that Chivhayo is the law unto himself.
At some point he was.
When President Tsvangirai, then the president of the democratic movement, was told by Didmus Mutasa that I'm looking for you when he was the Minister of State Security, he had no choice than to leave the country and seek refuge in Botswana when he had won an election.
Yeah.
Because Mutasa thought that is the law unto himself. But today Mutasa needed the same constitution to protect him against his own.
Didmus Mutasa was lawlessness personified.
You get the point?
Yeah.
So a reminder to those that are yielding power,
that tomorrow,
that you must invest in the sacrosanctity of the constitution.
Entrench democratic politics, entrench constitutionalism, entrench the rule of law, entrench an independent judiciary, the principles, because one day
you would need it.
They should not say
you get the sense now. So as we define the character of the democratic movement, our first point of contact is to reaffirm our value of constitutionalism.
Okay.
Number two is to make sure that we re-articulate our Pan-African anchor. Because the challenges that we face in this country, Brother Mlambo, are not unique from the challenge that ordinary people are facing in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
That's so correct.
And the challenges facing peasants in Lusaka, and the challenges facing people in Tanzania, present-day South Africa. So the conversation about regional integration must be codified in the character of the democratic movement as a Pan-African democratic movement that seeks solutions not just for Zimbabwe, but solutions for the continent. Because we need regional and continental solutions to the problems facing black people in the world, Africans in general, and Zimbabweans in particular.
Yeah, you remind me of the words of the late great Kwame Nkrumah. When Ghana got its independence, I think 56 or 57, the independence of Ghana is not enough until the entire African continent is liberated. So that idea that Africa is one is very, very important. Yeah,
precisely.
So you have touched on the importance, if I have to quote you correctly, constitutionalism, very, very important. Then that aspect of being Pan-African in nature
is very important.
So it's Pan-Africanism, but rooted in the principles and values of democratic politics and democratic governance.
Precisely.
But in terms of the training, what role would in training of cadres, party members in ideological, a founding manifesto, you touched on it in the last episode, the role of political education in a political movement. Wow, how important is political education?
Look, at the present moment, our politics in the country is consumed by an antipathy towards ideas. So the first and most important duty of the democratic alternative is recruit people, but train them. Sankara talks about something very important when he's addressing soldiers in Upper Volta in preparation for what is present-day Burkina Faso. Thomas Sankara's principled politics as a celebrated African revolutionary was anchored on a clear ideological direction and persuasion. That's why he says that a soldier without ideological orientation is a potential criminal. How do you locate the criminality of a soldier? Is when they assume power, when they are in the field. In the democratic struggle, who are the soldiers? Our soldiers are the deployees that we deploy in parliament.
In council.
The deployees that we deploy in local
even a presidential
authorities.
Candidate.
Our deployees that we deploy into the presidents. Cabinet ministers that we assume and we deploy into the cabinet of our country. Those must reflect the posture, must reflect the character of the organization. So the biggest responsibility that bedeviled now the alternative is to train those people. If you go to local government offices and processes, when people debate about land, when people debate about water, it must reflect the character of the organization.
Ideologically.
We are a pro-poor platform.
But we see, but you are a pro-poor platform, but we see the councils of the opposition supporting the privatization of water, supporting the outsourcing of, services like your parking to, private companies, right? Instead of the capacity of the local councils, because a pro-poor party believes in, if I'm to quote you correctly, believes in insourcing, building state capacity at local authority level. So the importance of training cadres
precisely
before deploying them.
Because you see, Karl Marx says something very fundamental, Brother Mlam.
Yeah.
He says, to the extent that the masses are not educated,
yeah,
the leadership is to be blamed. So
can you repeat that one? Yes.
To the extent that the masses are not educated, the leadership is to be blamed.
Yeah.
In his case, it was the vanguard.
Yeah.
So we bear the responsibility. So when you see a councillor failing to allocate housing for our people and prioritizing closure of a road for a private individual against public interest, anyone who's seen supporting that particular agenda, you must know that there is no investment in training that particular individual, because cadreship orientation does not only teach you the ideological posture, but it also teaches you process legitimacy, which is what has died in our body politic. Mthuli Ncube goes to Boroman without parliamentary approval. Someone says, I want to privatize road because I'm a son of people who occupy the presidents. So there is no due procedure. So the culture of due process. So someone wants to go to a government complex and quickly takes an ID, probably because they are connected somewhere. The lack of procedure as a culture. So our revolution you would see going into the future is beyond assuming political power.
It's a cultural revolution. The Chinese did so.
To change the way people do things.
The way people do things. Moving on, Comrade Osalas, in the interest of time, the Auditor General recently published a report, like always, year in, year out, we've seen reports coming out. Do you have any comments on the recently published Auditor General's report? If so, what are your comments from a social justice point of view, human rights point of view, economic development point of view, developmental state aspirations point of view? What would you say from what you've read so far?
Look, the Auditor General raises very alarming concerns. But concerns, it qualifies quantitatively. It brings life to naysayers and regime troglodytes that thought that the things that we're raising are political rhetoric. So the Auditor General is given flesh, is given data and evidence into what we've said in this platform and others, that one our country is in debt distress. But the Auditor General confirms that our debt is now at $21.5 billion.
US dollars,
13 billion on external debt,
the remainder,
8.9 billion, which is the remainder on domestic debt. So he raises that. So he gives quantity into this submission. Secondly, he raises the challenges we have told the Minister of Finance and the executive that, look, you have to float local currency. You cannot continue using the Zimbabwean dollar because the Zimbabwean dollar is like a husband or a wife who has been caught cheating. You are caught pants down.
Flagrant delict.
So when you are caught like that, divorce becomes the natural order of things.
So
when you go to court and say, I'm divorcing on this basis, the magistrate court, even the most incompetent one, will say, on this basis, we are granting you divorce. So Zimbabweans quote this local currency when Chinamasa rated there are no true accounts. When the regime continues to pronounce inconsistent policies.
In 2007, 2008, remember there was hyperinflation.
You get the point.
And they stole our money.
So people live with those cars. And pensioners were the greatest losers of this. So
even ordinary workers, I mean, there was serious wage erosion because of hyperinflation.
You get the point. So people know this existence. They don't need men and women in ties from air-conditioned offices. They know what it means. So Auditor General confirms when the report says that part of the challenge is that state-owned enterprises and parastatals were facing was the currency-induced distortion.
Yes.
So the Auditor General raises that. That the reason why they could not get some of the financial statements from local authorities, from state enterprises, and parastatals, was because of these currency distortions. So it means that they have to revise. You're given money in ZIG.
So it becomes an accounting problem.
You get the point? The Auditor General again raises questions around transparency. The Auditor General talks about procurement of stuff that can never prove
that was never delivered. Yeah,
you get the point.
Gweru City
Council is guilty
example,
for $833 million
US
of ZIG
that
of goods that were procured that never showed up.
So where did those goods go to?
The Treasury is guilty of the same.
Hey.
We talked about process legitimacy. The General disperses millions of money that are now not accounted for.
But how does that happen in a government, man? Comrade Osalos.
Which is why some of us were proposing that we have to relook at the role of the central bank if we are to assume governance in this country. We have to look at that because it's got to do with procedure, it's got to do with corruption. Look at how much we lose on the auction system. We lose annually more than $1 billion on the auction system. So which is what the Auditor General is saying, but because it's not a political office, it will not pronounce. But what the Auditor General is saying that float the local currency and in the interim use the US dollar. And by the way, we are not anti our own local currency. We must pronounce it. We believe that we must save our own local, but the rules of economics are simple. You must first produce.
Productivity.
You must have reserves.
Zimbabwe is to industrialize.
You get the point. We must stop the leakages.
Illicit financial flows.
We lose $1 billion plus on illicit outflow of gold alone.
So if we plug that, then we can have
we're able to
but that's issues to state capacity. In a developmental state, the role of the central bank, the role of the intelligence services, the role of the security services in clipping corruption in the bud, prosecuting those.
Precisely.
Look at Nepal.
Yes.
The youth in Nepal have demonstrated to the elites who are stealing. No, you are stealing our future, you are stealing our destinies. Now it's time for you to go.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. In Kenya, we've seen the same. Why? Because there comes a point in time when people are saying, we also want to be part and parcel of those who are benefiting from the God-given resources we have. If the inequality continues to grow, it even threatens social cohesion. You see, in our country. Last thoughts on the Auditor General before we move on, in the interest of time. Yes. So, you wanted to come in?
I wanted to express on your point of the developments in Nepal.
Oh, okay.
Which we have expressed our full solidarity
with the young people.
With the young people, and of course, like we did with Gen Z in Kenya. What is ironic, Brother Mlambo, is that while the young people are clamoring for freedom in Nepal and taking the fight, what are young people doing in this country? They are twerking. They are drawing their faces with mud and dust and acclaiming names of individuals in pursuit of an automobile, which in a normal country you can buy on your own. But when the state builds this capacity, it's young people who in this country are the major demographic group, must not be twerking on the internet. If an artist is reduced, instead of producing music and speaking to socialism and development in your own area, in your own language, using the God-given gift in you, but you are now twisting your lyrics into trying to twerk to some men. Why should your dignity as a Zimbabwean citizen, a country
be reduced
with more than 20 precious minerals? Why should you be? So what happened to human dignity? Because that is central. That's why question of ideology. Because when we talk about making all men and women equal, we're talking about your dignity, Brother Mlambo. Why should a graduate be reduced into such comic and dignifying methods? Look at the police in the country. They have to be reduced to twerk again to these criminals.
A police officer cannot even afford a car.
You are carrying the badge of honor, the badge of your country. Why should you be reduced to be twerking for a criminal when you must actually be invoking the provision of the law and making those people accountable?
Something is fundamentally wrong.
Our country says we are learning from China. That is the posture that they put. What will Chinese do to such criminal?
No, you don't do that in China.
Those people,
my friend, the Chinese Communist Party stopped Jack Ma, one of China's richest persons.
You get the point.
He was made to be in line. So, with the national vision of Chinese socialism, with Chinese characteristics.
So what are those young people?
The ability of the developmental state.
What are they learning? you get the contradiction.
Yeah, it's a contradiction.
It's a contradiction.
Thank you so much, Comrade Salos. Moving on, you are in Ghana, in Accra, Ghana. You're attending the AFCOD conference. It was a gathering of a lot of organizations, I understand, talking about public debt on the African continent and how public debt is affecting the continent. Your reflections from the AFCOD conference, you can maybe inform us what was happening there, who was there. I understand there was a protest and the submission of a petition. What was happening in Ghana?
Look, we must first thank the people of Ghana for playing critical role in the history and progress of the African continent, starting with President Kwame in their role into independence, as the first country to attain independence. They are playing a very pivotal role in the fight for reparations for the African continent.
Possibly, you can tell us about reparations from what? Or reparations about what? From who?
Look, the reason why some of us have taken a Pan-African anchor into our fight in the continent is because, like we say, is that the question of trade, the question of integration, the question of debt problems cannot be solved by countries in their individual sovereign status. The African continent must come together and resolving the debt crisis. Because we are basically in distress with more than 50% of the continent, of the African continent in debt distress. What does it mean? It means that half of the African continent is spending money servicing a debt. And when you do that, there are problems. It means that you are prioritizing servicing debt instead of providing social service to
so you are crowding out social service.
And how are they doing it? They're doing it at the behest of the proposition by the IMF and the World Bank. The Paris Club of Lenders proposition of servicing debt includes increasing tax to your people. So the debt conference is a convening of progressive forces in the African continent. Members of parliament, government officials, civil society actors, and practitioners to try and speak with one voice. Our external debt in the African continent is right now pegged at 746 billion
US dollars.
So, and part of this debt is a debt that forgets the history of the continent. How was this debt accrued? That is where we must start. So the negotiations by African countries must be done by Africa as a bloc. To say, first, let's go for reparations, because there must be compensation, Brother Mlambo. The money that we owe, part of it is debt that was funding colonialism. It was funding crimes against humanity. So the idea of debt forgiveness must not be in the current format of HIPIC, Highly Indebted Poor Countries Program. It must be on the form of the fact how we must audit the African debt. We must know how was this debt accrued, because it is the ordinary people that are paying.
And then ascertain.
If there is a payment that is happening for wars that happened historically in Nagasaki and so forth, there are reparations being paid by Germany. Right now, there's a negotiation between Germany and Namibia.
Over the genocide against the Herero.
So when the Germans are renegotiating payment to the Herero people, the question is, what about the debt question that was accrued by these institutions that were declared the crimes against human, not by us,
what about
but by
the British?
United Nations?
What about the British?
Precisely
the colonial period from 1890 when they colonized Zimbabwe.
Precisely. Do you know that?
Where's the reparations?
South
Africa is 1614.
When we talk about reparations, Brother Mlambo, the funny thing is that it goes beyond the debt, because we accumulated the debt from the Bank of England that Mugabe then refused to pay, and was still paying arrears and
I think
penalties.
They paid 170 million.
You get the point.
First 6 months of the year.
You get the point. But that debt should be cancelled, because it's
illegitimate.
The Smith regime was illegal, not by Zimbabwean standard, by the
UN
pronunciation, by the UN resolution, and the Queen of England. It was clear it did not recognize UDI. You get the point. So, but not only that, we have got our artifacts
that were stolen.
They must be returned back.
In museums in London. I had the privilege of being in London at some point.
And if we take those, do you know that the museum in London are empty?
You know, you
get the point.
You have that in London, the British Museum.
We are not spiritual people. But our history is spiritual as a people. So those covenants are a symbol. That's why even the Israelites were fighting for the Ark of the Covenant.
It's significant.
You get the point? So we need...
Also, the conversations that AFCON were broad.
Beyond
debt, it was reparations, it was returning of
our
artifacts.
Things must come back.
I see.
You get the point. But beyond that, we're also talking about debt restructuring.
On the continent.
Because we must restructure the debt architecture global.
Oh, you mean the global financial system
global
that
financial
has produced
must be
this
restructured.
Unfair,
so
okay.
That fight should not be fight that is pursued by Zimbabwe and South Africa. It's a fight that must be pursued by progressive Africans and Africans in the diaspora.
Which brings me to the next point. Ethiopia recently built a dam, and they didn't use money from the IMF, neither they used money from the World Bank. It was money mobilized through creating bonds that were sold to civil servants. The Ethiopian government leveraged on the Ethiopian diaspora, which is massive like ours. I think they have a bigger diaspora than ours, but quantitatively they are more or less like us in terms of the diaspora. They did not borrow, and they have built Africa's largest dam and hydroelectricity system that will generate around 5,000 megawatts of electricity. We should not only supply Ethiopia, Comrade Dosalos, but from a Pan-African point of view, it will also help regionally in East Africa, Kenya, other countries that surround Ethiopia will equally benefit from that project on the Nile. So the issue we're talking about reforming the global financial architecture is key, but also Africa itself needs to divorce itself from the IMF, from the World Bank. I think the former president of Nigeria recently at a Africa Free Continental Trade Area meeting boldly claimed or boldly stated that no, Africa must do away with the IMF. Africa must do away with the World Bank because they do not serve our interests. That's a former president of Obasanjo. So we are seeing conversations at different levels of society in Africa, and from what you're telling me from AFCO, that Africans are of the view that at this point in time, the current global financial system, as it is headquartered in Bretton Woods, in Washington, do not or does not serve our interests as Africa. The IMF voting structure is not reflective of the population dynamics even. It's only on the size of the economy. So the voting rights are biased towards the so-called bigger economies.
So they perpetuate
inequality at a global level.
That is why we talk about neocolonialism. It's no longer now men and women coming in with guns. It's now making sure that you are permanently in debt distress, you permanently owe someone. So you lose the obligation to help your people. You lose the obligation to transform the lives of ordinary people.
And you become dependent on these people.
And the problem, and the president of Botswana, Boko, has also expressed the same views. That Africa must speak with one voice on international trade, but also making sure that we focus domestically. You raise a very important point about Ethiopia. And we must congratulate Ethiopia for the past 14 years.
100%.
They've been domestically mobilizing the resources. Zimbabwe is a big diaspora community. The diaspora in Ethiopia played a crucial role. But you see that it goes back to the governance question.
Developmental state.
Ethiopia focused on restoring the social contract, its relationship with the ordinary citizen. That's why an ordinary average Ethiopian can tell you that I was contributing.
I built the dam.
Today they're generating 5,000 megawatts. I was reading a report from the power supply in this country. We need 2,000 megawatts of electricity in this country. And they say that by August, they generate about 1,600 megawatts of electricity. Now, the problem with the African continent and Zimbabwe in particular is that energy is what we must focus on because we want to industrialize. So we will not be able to industrialize when our country is still in load shedding. We go for hours without electricity. So the danger with that is not just people think that not having lights in our houses. It disrupts communication. It disrupts industry and commerce. But if you're in a bank, you want to make a transaction, and now electricity is gone, probably their backup generator has problems. Everything goes to
even railway. If you need an electric train to move faster,
you get the point.
You need the electricity.
So our conversation now must not be people saying you must pay $65 to go to Sanganai, where you go to Nyore, it is closed down, but they went there to open it.
And took some.
That's how much this country has been reduced to a joke. You went to a company that collapsed. You say, give us the remnants of the sofas that you have.
Oh my God.
They're no longer fashionable. Even in Glenview, which was recently painted, produces better couches. We no longer call them sofas, Brother Mlam.
Call them couches.
But the Minister of Tourism, with the Minister of Youth, and the Deputy Minister in the Ministry of Finance came together, and of course, in the other bloated delegation, to go to a closed Nyore office, hypopolical, to collect old sofas, put them in a train. They did not even take a labor to mount the sofas in the train. You take them to Mutare. You say to our people who have been paying $10 in Rimbi tours,
or in tender bus.
You come from Manikali, they always leave you at Fourth to negotiate and pay $8. You get the point?
Yes.
They are now living there.
Yeah.
They are told to live as patriotic citizens.
Oh, good.
To live $80 in tender and Rimbi, to go and pay $65 to spend hours in a locomotive. That reminds us of the Smith days. So,
but do you know that the train system that they inherited in 1980
was a functional one? You get the point? Do you know that you discourage domestic tourism, Brother Mlambo?
Simply by price.
You get the point? Not just by price,
but by the type of transport models.
The type of transport, by also reducing Sanganai into a political party event.
Where it's supposed to be national,
to listen to exhausted nationalist rhetoric. Who go there? So this shy and antipathy towards process, legitimacy, dignity is gone. While this, Brother Malam, were on the energy topic, we proposed a few years ago that progressive Africans taking experience from Ethiopia, we must all converge. That's why the governance question of the Democratic Republic is very important to be resolved.
DRC
because the Inga project, Brother Mlam,
is a long-lasting solution to Africa.
Has capacity to generate more than 30,000 megawatts of electricity. So if the entire African continent, which is Africans here and Africans in the diaspora,
to pour money,
come together and say we are investing in the Inga project, you would know that will solve the long crisis of electricity.
But the DRC needs peace and stability.
It needs peace and stability.
It needs a government that has territorial control of every area.
So you cannot shy away from the democratic question, from the governance question, because when you raise them, people saying you're now being political, you must give the regime a chance. Look at our negotiation to resolve the debt crisis as a country. Which
SDP
is the Auditor General. That negotiation platform collapsed on one thing. Governance issues.
Reforms.
Mtuli has been told to publish statements by the IMF, which they are trying to adhere to, but they can't because they know that they have problems in the Ministry of Finance. That's one. Number two, the Chisano-led process was on the basis that once we go to an election in 2023 and resolve the governance question, issues around constitutionality, issues around respecting parliament, respecting the Public Finance Management Act, respecting the provision of the constitution when we borrow, which the Auditor General raises.
That they are violating
you get
the constitution, the rules.
So all this speak to the question that we're going to continue in debt distress. We're going to continue with the energy crisis. But we're not going to solve it by slogans.
So inequality and poverty are going to be further entrenched. Wow, Comrade Salos, thank you so much for your insights and your views. As always a pleasure to have you on the show to discuss these matters that we see in the motherland and beyond. But as you correctly said, we have to congratulate the people of Ethiopia and the government of Ethiopia for such a remarkable, development. That will go a long way. It's beyond electricity. The dam will also provide water for small-scale farmers in rural areas. The value chain, man, it will just transform the economic fortunes of that country. But it's beyond even the dam. But when you look at Ethiopia's aviation industry, as an African, we know that wherever you want to go out of the continent, if you use Ethiopian Airways, you are guaranteed that it can take you to any part of the world.
Precisely.
They have over 150 planes, quality planes, and they are building a new airport because the Bola International Airport is proven to be.
But in our country, an aeroplane disappeared.
The Auditor General actually flagged 4 years ago.
So how do we
that
compete?
Zimbabwe, no, it's not one, it's three. Zimbabwe failed to account for 3 airplanes.
How do we compete with ET?
Oh my God.
How do we go back to the Community of Nations when we still cannot? An aeroplane, brother, is not a fly. An aeroplane,
it's a machine. It's a massive thing.
But it disappeared. Three of them disappeared. No one knows where they went. No one can locate them.
To date, no one is accounted for.
That is the extent of the
crisis. That Zimbabwe failed to account for 3 aeroplanes. But there's Ethiopia and Africa. There's the model, copied the model of good governance, a developmental state. So I don't know what really the problem is, but thankfully, we use this platform to express our ideas, to demonstrate to the young people of Zimbabwe, the older generation, the middle age, that no, there is hope in young people. There is hope in this generation, that we are not a generation of slogans. We are a generation of ideas, and hence this platform, the Tête-à-Tête, is a conduit for you to then funnel out the ideas to the people and understand that no, beyond what we are talking about, in terms of the needs and aspirations of our people. These are the concrete ideas we can implement. One of them, the capable state.
Precisely.
That should be directly involved in the management of the economy, in the planning of the economy. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. In the interest of time, we will have to leave it here.
Yes.
Then we will take it further in the next episode. But we want to salute the people of Zimbabwe who continue to support the show. We send our peace and love to the people of Sudan who have been, at war with each other, brother against brother. We continue to call on the African Union to make sure that the crisis in Sudan is solved. We continue to call on the African Union to make sure that the crisis in the DR Congo is solved so that there is peace in that rich country. No one can have a cell phone and laptop without the DRC, because all the minerals that are in your iPhone, the iPhone you so brag about, they come from the Democratic Republic of Congo. We can't have the United States of America, an imperialist power, brokering peace for the DRC when Africans are there.
We must
what
discuss
happened to African solutions to African problems? So those who do not agree with us on the Tête-à-Tête, we always emphasize that they are more than welcome, because this is about ideas. For one of the greatest thinkers of our time, Brian Kagoro, says,
yes,
ideas run the world.
Precisely.
Ideas run the world. And Treasure Paso,
yes,
one of our persons on the Tête-à-Tête says, ideas are a public good.
Yes.
So they should be free by their very nature.
They must be shared like a plate of meal.
You see, they must be
under a tree. That's what defines Africa.
That's what defines Africans under the African moon.
Yes.
So thank you so much. Always bear in mind, fellow Zimbabweans and Africans, that no man worth entangled himself with the affairs of this life, that he may learn to please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. For better is not good enough. The best is always yet to come. I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.